I want to pose a question. When did Victorians elect a totalitarian leader? Because it seems to me that Victoria is now under totalitarian rule, with every Victorian being held virtually hostage by what appears to be a modern-day dictator. Daniel Andrews' move on Monday to extend Victoria's state of emergency for a further 12 months is deeply disturbing. If he succeeds, he'll have in his hands the mechanism to shut down Victoria whenever he likes, or to extend the current stage 4 lockdown indefinitely. An action that could destroy Victoria's economy and impact the lives of Victorians even further. Now, affording him such power to determine the fate of our lives is a frightening thought. It really is. It's unacceptable. Next week, Parliament has an enormous responsibility. It sits to decide whether the Premier will get this extension. It must not let it happen. The opposition leader, Michael O'Brien, must behave like a Premier in waiting and fight the good fight for all Victorians. He must rally support like never before to ensure that Daniel Andrews does not get his way. But if the past, I'm afraid, is any predictor of future performance, then the leadership of sorts currently being provided by Michael O'Brien may mean that it's a task he's incapable of fulfilling. Victoria is in a deep, dark hole, and it's about to get even deeper. Currently, Victoria is cut off from the rest of the country. Think of this. While the rest of Australia continues to emerge from what has been a 6-month hiatus, we in Victoria remain alone, like a leper colony. There is no one coming to our rescue. There's no cavalry, and there's certainly no Australian light horsemen. But if we could just invoke for a moment that Anzac spirit, if there was ever a time to mount an action like the famous charge made by the 4th Australian Light Horse Brigade, that saw the thundering hooves of 800 horses and the brave Anzacs who rode them cross the desert plains of Sinai to take Beersheba. Wouldn't you want that right now? Wouldn't you want, say, for example, the Prime Minister to take that example set by the Brigadier General William Grant as his inspiration, to ride in and to come save Victoria and realise his Beersheba moment? It hasn't happened thus far, and it's not likely to happen, which means that Victoria is in a desperate place. It needs help. It needs saving. Victoria really does need Scott Morrison to intervene and save the state from a Premier who appears hell-bent on destroying it. Make no mistake, this is an emergency. Victoria and Victorians can no longer be held hostage by a Premier who's lost the ability to lead or to guide the state through the bungled mess that he and his incompetent ministers and chief medical officer managed to create during what was a COVID crisis that many of the other premiers around Australia managed to contain. It's evident that the Premier is out of his depth, and the time has come for him to step aside. I don't say that lightly. I understand the decision-making on the run that we've witnessed has been born out of the intense pressure that he's currently under, and I can sympathise with him. I think we all can. But it doesn't excuse his failure to understand that the decisions that he's been making have been truly destructive. And it's also inexcusable for the Prime Minister to ignore Victoria's current plight and our possible fate. Because by doing that, not only would he be consigning Victoria to even further turmoil, but he'd be affecting the entire country. That's how important Victoria has been and still is to Australia. Scott Morrison cannot just sit by and watch the destruction of Victoria continue, nor can he tinker around the edges any longer. He can't stand by and watch like a modern-day Nero this dismantling of Victoria and the plight of all those who live in the state. As sad as the 400+ lives lost to COVID-19 has been, it just doesn't compare to the many lives that we've lost to suicide because of the uncertainty created and that feeling of helplessness that all Australians have seen, but Victorians are feeling. Now, if that is the case, and if that is what we're being told is true, that there are Victorians teetering on the edge, contemplating suicide, Daniel Andrews' power move has probably pushed them over the edge. And if that is the case, then Daniel Andrews will have blood on his hands. And his conscience will have to bear the memories of all those that he's lost on his watch through this combination of mixed messaging and a grab for power. The Premier's failure to acknowledge or even accept his poor leadership has created a far bigger epidemic than the threat caused by COVID. Think about that. A far bigger threat. A mental health epidemic. That is the true public health issue that we're facing in Victoria today. And it's something that no one's addressing. The lives of all those Victorians who saw no way out but through suicide is an indictment of the performance provided by the Premier. He's failed them by not providing the hope that they need to see or needed to see and believe that there is a way out, a genuine way out of this mess. What we've seen instead, a rapid escalation of mental health issues, the destruction of families and relationships because of an increase in domestic violence. We've seen a homelessness created, the destruction of Victoria's economy for our future generations, the impending disaster that we're all facing. And think about this. All this turmoil has dismantled the sacrifices made by past generations of Victorians who toiled long and hard to help build Victoria. All of that has gone. Then you add to that a lack of confidence to invest in Victoria and the billions of dollars that are currently walking out the door, as well as the exodus of Victorians who are now looking to live interstate. They've had enough. The list, well, it just goes on and on. And throughout this crisis, the Premier has refused to discuss these issues. And this will be his legacy. He's ignored them because he knows that to address them would paint a far more devastating picture of what he has created than the shadow cast by the COVID pandemic. Not once has the Premier discussed a recovery plan, nor has he addressed a way forward. There's only one reason for that. He doesn't have one. Prime Minister, Victoria needs your help. This is an emergency. SOS, come save us.